So in that case, let's get started. This webinar is going to talk about the new features coming to PersonalFinanceLab.com for the spring of 2022. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the Director of Product Development. That means I work between the sales, marketing, and account management team with the developers to figure out what new features they're going to be adding and making sure that they're released on time. So this is a summary of the new stuff you can expect for January. We have some general improvements that are just general stuff across the site. We have a couple new things for both the stock game and the budget game. Most of the new enhancements that we're releasing for January have to do with the assignments engine, tracking, and all the reports. We have a lot of new reports coming in the next week or so. And then I have a couple other administration enhancements I'm going to talk about at the very end. These are going to come a little bit later, towards the middle of the spring semester. So to get started with the general improvements, the first and foremost is our course outlines. Now, at the beginning of the spring semester, at the beginning of this fall semester, we did release our first 9-week course outline. The course outlines have, they basically break down the material that we have on PersonalFinanceLab.com, both our budget game and our stock game, along with the lessons in our curriculum library, into a recommended sequence that you can use over 9 weeks. We're also about to release our 18-week course outline, which kind of does the same thing, but over a longer period, over a whole semester instead of just a quarter. Now, these are based on the Jumpstart standards, which the newest version, which is both the Jumpstart and the Council on Economic Education's joint standards that were released. The curriculum library itself is aligned to far more sets of state standards, but the reason that we have this course outline is that it basically says, if you're using the budget game, these are the lessons in the curriculum that kind of pair along with it best to get your students up to speed of what they're doing, and so it kind of synergizes the best it possibly can. So we have the 9-week is available right now. We're actually updating it to make it a little bit easier for teachers to find and use, and then we're releasing the 18-week course outline either next week or the week after, but it will be available for January. Again, if you can feel free to follow it, or you can just use it as a guideline. There's nothing built into PersonalFinanceLab that requires you to use things in certain sequences. The second enhancement has to do with our, the back end of our server. Now, we did a huge update to the PersonalFinanceLab website. We had an overwhelming response for our free fall national challenge, where we had a lot of teachers coming in and trying out PersonalFinanceLab for the first time. We had about 5 or 10 times as many students on PersonalFinanceLab that we were expecting this year, which is great. But then a lot of classes did notice that the site started to slow down near the end of October, the beginning of November. So we've more than doubled how many server resources we have allocated, so it's fast and speedy for the spring semester coming forward. And we're paying a lot closer attention to as we get into the semester and we start seeing all the classes come in if we're going to need to add more. So we shouldn't see that sign kind of slow down that we saw this last semester again. So those are the two things just at a high level of what you're going to be seeing on PersonalFinanceLab. Now, when I get into the stock game, now we always make all kinds of improvements to the stock game. I can probably list 50 of them off the top of my head, but things that not every teacher would ever really notice. The big one that actually will impact how you could use the stock game in your class is that we improved our historical snapshots of all the data. So this means that students and teachers can now export students' open positions, so the stocks and all the investments they're holding, for any day of the competition. We used to only take these snapshots on Fridays, but we had a lot of students that were trying to track when exactly something happened in their portfolio, and this helps them do that. We also talk about how to do these exports as part of our lessons on spreadsheets. There's a particular lesson talking about getting and importing data that shows students how they can access this data and bring it into Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel and use that data to do all kinds of analysis. For the budget game, we are working on a whole lot of stuff for the budget game, but it's not going to be ready for the January, and so I'm just going to talk about the one thing that will be ready for January, is that as part of the budget game, we have these lesson cards built in. Most events of the game happen and they're kind of random, and they have an expense or income that students make. But on certain days of the game, we do make students go through some small lessons talking about financial literacy concepts. The way these lessons work now is they view the lesson, and in that lesson there's some bit of information that they use to and answer the question that's on this card, and they enter a number in order to continue. We've found that that's kind of confusing, especially to middle school students, but a lot of high school students too, especially things that could be a percentage or they're trying to enter a decimal. So the new version is going to replace this with multiple choice questions. So it's going to be a little bit more friendly on mobile devices, particularly tablets, because the way that we're actually going to display the lesson is going to be contained in the same window, so students won't have to kind of switch between tabs. but the answer to the question is also going to be a multiple choice question to make it a little bit easier for students to see what's going on and progress through the game. The second part is that starting now, we're actually taking a snapshot at the end of each month of students' progress in the game of what all of their stats are. And we're going to be using this to improve all of the students' summary reports so they can see how all of the statistics they've had in the game have been moving over time. So, how has their net worth grown? How has their quality of life been going? How is their credit score? And they can compare this with a breakdown of their net worth of where did all of this come from. So putting this all together is we're trying to make it a little bit more visual and give students a better sense of progression of how they're doing over the course of the game. So this brings us to the biggest changes that we have, which is our assignment enhancements. So I'm going to take a little bit more time on this. I'm going to actually go into the PersonalFinanceLab website because I do have this available now to show off. The first part is that we divided up our curriculum into units. So instead of just having the 60 personal finance lessons where teachers can kind of grab whichever ones they want to see, we've divided it up into units that are in the order that we recommend in the 9 and 8 week course outlines. Each unit has a very short introduction lesson, just 100 words or 200 words, and then at the end of the unit it has an assessment that covers topics in all of the lessons in that unit. Now we used to have an assessments feature part of the site that would look at all of the tasks that you had in any given assignment that you had, but if you had assignments that were split over multiple assignments, like you had some tasks that students were expected to do one week and other tasks students were expected to do another week, they wouldn't line up. This one does. So with this, you can say, after my students have finished the topics in the budgeting section, for example, they can take the assessment that covers all of the topics that were part of the budgeting section. You can also see on here that we have timestamps on each of the lessons. So this is based on the actual time it's taken students to complete all of these lessons over the course of this semester. We have been storing that information now, and we're making it available for teachers too. So you can see, I'm asking my students to do 20 minutes worth of work this week, or I'm asking them to do 2 hours worth of work, because that could be a very big difference. We did have a few cases this semester where a teacher didn't realize that they were asking their students to do 2 hours of homework in one given week. So that's going to help avoid that. Now, if I pull up my Personal Finance Lab assignment page, you should be able to see it here. This is exactly what it looks like for a teacher now. So up here I have my first unit, which has a unit introduction to the top here, and at the very bottom a unit assessment. If I go into my personal finance lessons, I have several different units. I have budgeting, credit, income and taxes, and risk and financial decision making. Now, as I start grabbing tasks in here, towards the top of the assignment, I can actually see, hey, with this I'm asking my students to do 29 minutes worth of work total. So it gives you a better benchmark of how much reading and everything else that are you asking your students to accomplish. Now, we do have all these units in here, but again, the assignment system works the same as before. You don't have to follow the units. You can still grab whatever lessons you want from wherever you want, whenever you want to, and use it for your class. We're just making it a little bit easier for teachers who were looking for a more comprehensive assessment that wasn't just covering quiz questions based on the article the student just read. So all of those together make it a lot clearer and easier to set up the assignments for your class. The next enhancement for the assignments section is the reporting. So this is going to be released next week. I can actually show it to you live now. We have new student progress reports. So the student progress reports now, instead of just seeing did your students finish something and what was the grade they got on it, you can actually dive in and see what they actually did on all of their quiz questions and all of the other activities they've been taking on the site. So, for example, this is a picture of the new progress report, which you can see I'm the only person in this class. It's a class of 1. But I can see that, in this assignment so far, this student has taken 12 minutes to accomplish the stuff they've finished. If I click on this details button, it'll open up all the stuff I've asked them to do. It'll show, what did they finish, how much time did it take them to finish it. So when I open up this quiz, for example, I see this student actually finish this quiz. I click the view button and it shows me the individual responses they had for every question in that quiz. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? If you have retries enabled for your class, you can also see each attempt separately. So this is a big part of us trying to make it easier for you to see what your students are doing, who's struggling, what kinds of questions the students are getting right and wrong. Now, the second change that we have to the assignments is that we're also taking all this information and making summaries for your class. So the new View Assignments report that you have available, it has all that same information, but it also has it's summarized for your entire class. So previously the View Assignment literally just listed the stuff you were asking your students to do. This new version, you can click on the details and you'll see, what percentage of my students got this question right, what percentage got it wrong. That way you can see the trends of the class of what questions is my class as a whole still missing, and what stuff are they really, really solid, so I don't need to worry too much about it. It'll also include the grade average, so the average grade for the student in the class and the average amount of time that this task has taken your students to finish. The next up, I just talked about that one, the administration enhancements. So these are much smaller. We have 2 enhancements coming. The first one is end of class notifications. So you might have already noticed this because we launched this late last month, but we now send emails to teachers right before their class ends, letting them know, hey, your class is about to end. Let me know if you need us to extend it. Because towards the end of the semester, it's one of the most common questions you get from teachers. Hey, my students aren't done with the stock game. Can you extend it a few weeks? This gives you a reminder ahead of time. That way you're able to extend it before your class actually ends. And then after your class ends, we send you some reminders about how you can find your end of class reports, how you can set up your class for next semester, and information like that. Now, the really big one, which is not actually coming for January, but it is the #1 thing that we're working on for a launch in the early to mid-spring, is Canvas and integration with the other LMS systems. So we're looking at Schoology, Blackboard, Canvas, a few others too. I don't remember off the top of my head. But the idea here is that we're going to be starting on making it so that teachers can add PFinLab to their LMS directly, starting with single sign-on. So the students can sign into PFinLab right from the LMS. They don't need a separate login. And then we're going to be rolling out more features as well. The end goal is to get it so the assignments that you have in PFinLab will be pushing back to your LMS. That's probably going to be a feature more towards the fall, but it is the eventual point we want to get to. We have a full, tight integration with all of the major LMS systems in the high schools in the United States. So that is the end of the new features. Does anyone have any questions for me? Not until you see it live. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. If you do have any questions or comments, the things that we add to PFinLab always come from feedback from both teachers and students. So we send out, we put a pop-up on the site at the end of every semester where we ask students to give their feedback, but all the account managers reach out to teachers as well to try to get their feedback. Now, around this time of year is when things start to get quiet on our end, and so we spend all of our planning sessions. So how can this be leveraged in TRIO programs? We only meet twice a month. So if you meet twice monthly, in that case, the actual way you'd use PFinLab doesn't change that much. You would just have your assignments would be longer than what we would have in our course outline. So it's a 9-week, and you just say, you'll stretch, instead of having it week by week, you'll just grab some stuff from the next unit. That's kind of the strength of the assignment system, is that you can really customize it and make it exactly how long you have a time available for in your class. So I'd be happy to discuss that more in detail with you, or one of the account managers could help you with that well of structuring it for the exact amount of time that you have available. But the last thing I was saying, my email is kevin@PersonalFinanceLab.com. There's also account managers, depending on what region of the United States or Canada that you're located in, who can also take your feedback. And we all meet in December, and we talk about, hey, these are the things that teachers really need. That's why the LMS integration is so high on our list for the spring, because we had a lot of teachers come to us about that over this semester and last semester, saying this is going to make a really big impact in my classes if I can have it connected to the LMS. So anything that you think is going to be helpful, let us know, and it's how we choose what we're going to build next. So with that in mind, we had a short and sweet webinar. I did take a recording of this, and I'm going to make it available for any teachers who couldn't make it. But otherwise, let me know if you have any other questions, and have good luck with the next semester, and have a lovely holiday break.